One thing that people often say is it's something I've experienced, but I don't like to tell people about it. Again, it comes back to that stigma, that hidden, not wanting to disclose that you've experienced mental ill health yourself. I mean, the number of MPs, for example, where we've been in meetings with them and they say, gosh, yes, my family member or my friend or my brother or sister or my daughter or son experiences mental ill health, but I'm too ashamed to talk about it and I keep it private instead of talking about it publicly. There are some people who do very bravely in some ways. We shouldn't have to say that it's brave, but it is for some people to publicly declare that they've either experienced it themselves or their family members or friends do. So I think we're still at that stage where people don't want to openly talk about it very much. So the people who have experienced it, they get it, but it's taking it, as you say, you're taking it to the next level to making sure that it has an impact for people with lived experience, so that we can find ourselves with a role, with some place for us. One thing that gives me hope is when people who are reluctant to share because they've had a bad experience sharing their lived experience before, and then they discover being brave and they discover finding those spaces where they feel valued, where people are kind, where they're able to flourish. That gives me hope. So the experts by experience, peer support workers that we work with that are doing those things, they give me hope for the future, because they're making a difference to themselves, they're making a difference to other people, and they're making a difference to mental health services, and that gives me hope and inspiration.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Peer Journal. I have Ian Callaghan today with me from Rethink. We're going to be talking about lived experience, research, what's happening in voluntary sector organizations. So first of all, hi Ian, welcome. How are you?
Hi Neil, I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Brilliant. So because I'm terrible at introductions, can you introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, definitely. So my name's Ian. I work for the charity Rethink Mental Illness as a lived experience program manager in the Lived Experience Insights team, which is a team within the policy and practice department.
Okay, that's very exciting to hear. So, what does lived experience programming mean?
So I'm a part of a team that organises and delivers some involvement and co-production projects, some short-term, some very long-term programmes. So we work for a variety of commissioners, working with experts by experience, as we call people who participate in our programmes, and we work with NHS trusts, integrated care boards, other commissioners to deliver these involvement and co-production programs.
So, just to confirm if I understand right, so the lived experience work you're doing is more on a strategic level and you're working with organizations. Is there any one to one, for instance, peer support happening at Rethink?
Yes, Rethink has peer support programs as well, which is in our operations team. So I'm not responsible for that delivery, but they're involved in some of our work as well, some of the training that we do, for example. But our work of our Lived Experience Insights team is more on both strategic co-production, but also bespoke short-term projects. For example, last year we did a project called Rethinking Schizophrenia, where we explored quality of life for people living with schizophrenia, because we're a charity for people severely affected by mental illness. So we mainly work with people who have those diagnoses.
Okay, I understand. Thank you so much. So, let's talk a little bit about you. How did you come into lived experience work? Where I remember the day I learned that it was a thing, for
Yes,
instance, and it changed my perspective
yes.
wholly. How was your experience? How did you come into this world?
So my lived experience journey actually started when I wasn't very well. about 15 years ago. My mental health wasn't very good. I found myself in hospital. I was very frustrated with, at times, the service that I was receiving in hospital, and I became very vocal, trying to improve things. And I became, we developed a patients' council on the ward I was on. I became the ward rep. I started to go to and get involved in quality improvement programs, and I discovered that both I had a voice, and collectively, as people with lived experience, we had a voice that could change things and that could improve the way that services were run. And that was the start of my journey.
How did it progress after that? So you start a patient council. How long it lasted, and how did it become a career? Because this is one of those areas. I always say, I'm going to digress a little bit and then bring it back to the question. I think the best recruitment pathway is a person who is receiving peer support, for instance. Uh, I think it takes some time and really good reflection when it becomes a decision that, okay, this is my career now. And it doesn't have to be. You can involve and engage as an expert by experience as whatever level you want. But turning it into a career, so far with the people I met, including my own story, is quite a coincidental journey. It's like it coincides with the will, the knowledge, but also opportunity and knowing where to find it, or just in my case, not knowing where to find it, but just running into it on the way of life. How did that happen for you?
So my mental health improved. I left hospital. I wanted still to be involved. I wasn't sure if peer support was for me. I had a peer support worker, and that was very, very helpful to my recovery journey. But I started working as a volunteer with Rethink Mental Illness, and this is now um, uh, 12 or 13 years ago, helping to organise an involvement network for people who had been in hospital. So we called that Recovery and Outcomes. So it was a national network for people who had experience of hospital care, where we were trying to improve the recovery focus of services. So that could have been through developing peer support programs in services, improving the outcomes that people achieved. We worked with commissioners of services as well. And it was something which I became very passionate about, was improving the quality of care, of inpatient care. And so I became a volunteer helping to organise this programme. And then the programme became commissioned and came to Rethink Mental Illness. And I applied for the job and got the job. And I've been there for the last 11 years now.
Very, very good and going strong. Um, so how do you see the scope of lived experience work at the moment? If someone who is just coming into lived experience work, or who just learned about it, or as a person who doesn't live in this country, and I ask you, how do you see the scope? How do you see its distribution between the NHS and voluntary sector organizations, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah. That's a really good question. It's very variable. There are roles in lots of different organisations. Some organisations don't have any roles yet for lived experience workers, but obviously we have peer support is an avenue that people can go down and get trained and find employment, be it in NHS or in other organisations, or people can become experts by experience and can work in the sort of involvement and co-production that we support at Rethink Mental Illness. So we employ, we have experts by experience working for us who we pay. They're not employed by Rethink Mental Illness, but we support them to be part of the programs that we run. So there are lots of opportunities for people to either to go down different routes and to have different careers, if you like, in lived experience.
Um, and when you look back on your 11 years at Rethink, and even longer, uh, starting from Patients Council, do you think we've come far? Do you think it's obviously it ebbs and flows, but how do you see the moment and where we are right now, where we are going?
Yeah. That's a really good question as well, because I think the power of involvement, the power of lived experience is very well known now. I think that compared with when I first started, when I was that frustrated person in hospital that was seeing that services weren't very high quality, and I wanted to do something about it. In those days, it wasn't very well organised. There weren't many peer support workers, for example. I was very fortunate to have a peer support worker, and there has been an increase in the number of lived experience roles. But we're at the point now where, while we know and understand the value and power of lived experience influencing and involvement and co-production, I think that we're at a bit of a tipping point where there aren't the structures, the support, there's not necessarily the training or supervision or opportunities for people. And I think that we have to be very, very careful at the moment that while we want to involve people and to support people to be in lived experience roles, we need to have better structure, we need to have better mechanisms for supporting people at the moment. So that's where I see where we are now. We're at a stage where we have some very senior lived experience roles, which is great. We have directors of lived experience in some trusts and in some other organisations as well, which is great, but we don't always have the infrastructure to support people and on the whole pathway of lived experience work.
Which brings me to policy work. So I'll just, put my hand up and say I don't know anything about policy making, and I know the need for it. I feel the need for it on a day to day basis. But if I would, if I wanted to influence it, I wouldn't know where to go or where to start. So, as a person who is involved in policymaking, what does that land look like? Who are you talking to, and what are these people are curious about when it comes to lived experience from the perspective of a policymaker?
So at Rethink Mental Illness, we have a policy and influencing team in our department that I work quite closely with, and we support experts by experience, people with lived experience, to be involved in our policy work as well. And that could be influencing government departments, it could be influencing commissioners, so for example NHS England or integrated care boards, and that's where our strategic co-production comes in, where we support people to be what we call expert by experience leaders in those spaces as well. And they might be operating at a very, very senior level, for example, co-chairing partnership boards or clinical governance meetings, or working with the commissioners of mental health services. And so there's a whole range of opportunities for people to be involved in policy making. We have a public affairs team, works directly with MPs, with government. I've, for example, given evidence to the Health and Social Care Committee about the recent Community Mental Health Services inquiry, spoken at the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Mental Health to MPs and people in the House of Lords. So there's a whole range of opportunities for people to get involved in policy making.
Now that's interesting because it brings up a very recent memory from last year. So what I've done is I didn't see any light on that politicians, MPs and local politicians as well. It doesn't look like they have any idea that lived experience exists. What would that mean? It being happening over a decade in many of the statutory services. So what I've done is I made an appointment with my local MP, Emily Thornbury, and probably they expected me to, I don't know, ask for housing or bring a more practical matter. So I explained myself and I said the reason, basically I just wanted to let them know about it, but I needed an excuse, a question, right? So I said, your government wants to bring people from long-term sickness and people with disability bring into the workforce. And there's something called lived experience work, which is very rewarding, very healing. And if it's set up right, it becomes a sustainable career, particularly people who are left out of the mainstream workforce. And not only lived experience is your best option, I think it's your only sustainable option. So what can we do about it? And within 10 minutes, she understood the concept, she asked the right questions, and then she came up with a plan. And I was mesmerized. I did not expect that at all. I was expecting being dismissed. And I know that she was meeting the C-level management twice a month. At least they had an appointment. I don't know if they're actually meeting or not. But I asked her, can you ask what's happening in our trust? Just to bring it into the conversation, basically. How manipulative of me. What happened was zero follow up despite my follow up inquiries. Now, there might be a million reasons for that. Uh, and it's not about that. But I feel like a lot of people don't know about it. When they first hear about it, I don't think it sinks. And so I don't know how to basically get this concept first of all into the minds of decision makers. How what do you think about it? Do you think there is now a base of knowledge? Who would know about it? Who just yeah, who are the people you are talking to, and how is their knowledge and approach to lived experience?
Mm. Yeah, no, no, I mean, well done for speaking to Emily Thornberry, and I'm really sorry that that didn't go any further. Some people get it, some people don't. Some people, when you do explain about lived experience work, they do understand it and see the value of it. I think it comes down to lots of different things, including at one level stigma and stigmatization still of people living with mental illness. People think that we're not capable of holding down a job, that we're not going to be able to have a successful career, that we're not going to be able to use our lived experience to support mental health services, the mental health system, and other people in that system. And I think that there's still a lot of people who just think that it's something that we might be able to do occasionally, or not be able to do it as a long-term dedicated occupation. So I think that we have to still, in this day and age, despite knowing, like we were saying before, the power of lived experience involvement, the difference it makes, the difference it can make to individual people's lives, to mental health services, the outcomes they achieve, and to the mental health system in general. I think that there's still a long way to go to convince a lot of people of the power of that, and that people should be given opportunities and training and structure and supervision, remuneration, and all of those things that go along with careers in something like that.
So when you think of the people you work with or your team works with, I'm talking about MPs, commissioners, decision makers on the other side of the table. How would you describe their perception? Obviously, this will be your perception of their perception, and then we'll go meta on it. But basically, I'm just curious about what's being talked about in those rooms and what they are asking. And this is not to judge, but genuine curiosity, because I don't know the realities of their roles and lives. Are these people personally invested in the idea of lived experience, or they pay attention because there was a national rollout program and it was built in the strategy, although I'm not sure if it still is, so what would you say about that?
Mm. One thing that people often say is, it's something I've experienced, but I don't like to tell people about it. Again, it comes back to that stigma, that hidden, not wanting to disclose that you've experienced mental ill health yourself. I mean, the number of MPs, for example, where we've been in meetings with them and they say, "Gosh, yes, my family member or my friend or my brother or sister or my daughter or son experiences mental ill health, but I'm too ashamed to talk about it and I keep it private instead of talking about it publicly." There are some people who do very bravely in some ways. We shouldn't have to say that it's brave, but it is for some people to publicly declare that they've either experienced it themselves or their family members or friends do. So I think we're still at that stage where people don't want to openly talk about it very much. So the people who have experienced it, they get it, but it's taking it, as you say, taking it to the next level, to making sure that it has an impact for people with lived experience, so that we can find ourselves with a role, with some place for us to work.
So when you look at the future, I'm not asking about a realistic, objective projection based on the data you know and experience you have, but more like aspirational look to the future. How would you like to see the future of lived experience work?
Yeah. So I would like to see lived experience in general as being seen something that's not brushed under the carpet. That it's something that we can declare, that people have a positive reaction to us expressing that we experience mental ill health. That people aren't subject to stigma and oppression and discrimination. That it's something which is just the same as expressing that you have any other aspect of your life, any other condition, for example, a physical health condition, even though there's stigma about that as well. But my ideal world would be one in which it's respected, in which people are encouraged to disclose about their mental ill health, that there are opportunities for people to work in places that values their lived experience and which sees the power of it for other people, the power of it for influencing how services are commissioned and delivered and monitored, and the way that the whole mental health system works, and for it for it to work to support people in their recovery much more than it does sometimes now.
When you're thinking about your work, maybe you need some ideas, or maybe I'm going to ask hope and inspiration at the end for personal reasons. This is the professional side of things. So, for instance, I was talking to another guest this morning, and he said in the beginning they looked Australia, for instance, for recovery ecology models. So, when you need new ideas and or you want to be in the know what's happening around the world, where do you look?
Mm. That's a really good question as well. So I've been for the last year, as you know, I've been doing this research fellowship, the Mental Health for All, a Mental Health Research for All fellowship, and my interest is lived experience leadership. And I've been looking at the literature and looking around the world, and Australia is one place that it seems to be more advanced in many ways, although they're experiencing challenges now with the support and the roles that they're having difficulties with. But yeah, I would look to places that have more developed and have it more embedded than we have. So that could be Australia or New Zealand or some parts of Canada as well, where it's one of those things which it depends so much on um, people's passions, and if you have passionate people that make a difference, and there just have been some very passionate people in those countries and in those systems, and we have passionate people, and we've got increasingly more passionate people. I hope I'm one of those through the work that I've been doing with the fellowship, for example, and the work that we do at Rethink Mental Illness and other organisations as well. And that's what passion takes us a long way and makes a big impact. So yeah, those are some of the areas that I would look to.
How do you see the lived experience work happening in voluntary sector organizations? And how sustainable it is moving towards the future, you think? Are there more funding opportunities? Um, Personally, I think it would be great actually peer support happening in the community rather than as part of a health service, for instance, only. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen in the NHS. I'm just saying it should be more widespread spread in the community.
Mm. No, definitely. I mean, it should be where people are at, and it should be as close to where people receive their services, or that might be in the community, or it could be in their own home, or it could be in their local communities. And so, certainly, for commissioners to look to smaller organisations and charities, for example, to be able to provide that support for people. Yeah, it's great that like you say, it's great that the NHS does it, but we should be looking to diversify and to fund, because it comes down to funding, oftentimes. But commissioners would be able to direct the funding to things that are organisations that work more closely with people the communities where they find themselves, rather than the person having to look outside of their environment to be able to find the support that they need. We should be going to where people are at.
So you mentioned mental health research for all, and they are also funding this season of the podcast. And thanks to that, I can explore this project. But I'm not a research fellow, so I've done the research internship. Now I'm doing this project. So I am invested and interested in research, but I understood thanks to this work that academic career is not for me, because I can't, first of all, narrow any of my questions down to be a quality research question. So right there, I'm blocked already. What are you doing as part of your research fellowship? What are you working on?
Yeah. So I've been doing several things. Been doing, and I'm still doing, because it's for a 2-day a week fellowship. It's an awful lot to do a scoping review about lived experience leadership. So that's my area of interest, and I've been reading lots of papers and exploring all of the literature of various sorts from around the world, particularly, as I say, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and other countries as well. I presented a poster. I put my early findings into a poster, which I presented at a mental health nursing research conference in September. I won a prize for the poster, which was very nice. Uh, yes, no, I was very surprised. I was completely shocked, to be honest, because some of the other posters were fantastic, but they seemed to like the one. I think it's because it's an area which is still quite new, and people's, like we were saying, they see the value of it and they want to invest in it, but we're not quite sure how to get there yet and how to embed lived experience leadership. So I think people saw it as something which, is very future focused at the moment as well. So I've been doing that. I've had an event where I brought together a whole range of lived experience leaders for a hybrid event. It was a very special occasion, I think, and other people found it very special for people to be in the same room, be it a physical room or an online space that we had together, just to be able to share ideas about. It was framed around the poster that I've done, the early findings of the scoping review. I was asking people, what do you think of the findings? What do you think about these challenges and barriers that I've found through the research, through the literature review, asking people how can we overcome some of those challenges and barriers, and those are some of the things that we've been talking about. And yeah, I'm still writing that up and hoping to publish that at some point as well. But what I'm trying to do now is to find a way forward to be able to still do my involvement in co-production work, but also do some more research into lived experience leadership. I'd like to really delve into people's experiences, to find out what is helping people, what's hindering people, what support do people need, how do we challenge that stigma, how do we break through what you were describing before about some people getting it, some people not getting it. How do we develop more of a career pathway for people? How do we support people more? It's great to have those very senior roles, but how do we have roles at every level that people can, be, for example, with Rethink Mental Illness, experts by experience, and how can they progress to other lived experience roles, be it in peer support or in strategic co-production or in influencing or working with, who knows, working to influence government departments, for example. What would lived experience leadership look like there?
So I know it will be a very long list, but what caught your eye so far in your research? What Talk to me a little bit about your initial findings. What stands out to you from your initial findings?
A couple of things, really. One is the importance of being true to what they call in the literature, talks about being true to peer. So, being true to your own lived experience. There's one paper that very nicely describes it as being your North Star. Having your lived experience is something which is the thing that you focus on, the thing that's most important in your work, that you don't lose sight of that you don't become another, that you don't water it down. if you like. But that just take in the challenges that we mentioned before about stigma and discrimination and prejudice that there still is. It can be very challenging. It can be very tiring. You need a lot of support. You need to be able to have support to be able to do that. So that's another theme that comes across in the literature, is that the importance of allyship. So having people who can support us in the roles that we have and can be our colleagues and be recognising our lived experience for that importance that it has. So being true to peer, having allies, but not becoming like not diluting your lived experience to be like other professionals.
Is there any work around showing, how do you keep true to your North Star, true North?
Yes, how do you keep so the importance of uh, being in connection with other people with lived experience is really important. So getting mutual support or mutual peer support from other lived experience leaders. And that was one of the things in the event that I had. Somebody was almost in tears because they just felt that they were amongst people who like-minded people who understood their journey, who understood what it meant to be a lived experience leader, the challenges that brought with it, the glass ceiling that there is sometimes, not being able to progress as much as you would like to, not having so much to progress to. So having people around you looking after yourself, your self-care, you're being kind to yourself, having others who are kind to you as well, because it does take a lot. It takes a lot out of you to always be true to your lived experience, because it's something which is so fundamental to your being, really, and to be true to that is can be quite challenging sometimes.
Is there anyone, any organization, any single person who you would like to celebrate today that you think other people should know about?
Oh, it's difficult to pin it down to one person. There are a couple of directors of
It can be more than one.
yeah, there are a couple of directors of lived experience in trusts in elsewhere in England. One in the north of England, one in the Midlands. One of them used to work for Rethink Mental Illness. I look up to them. I just think that being able to champion lived experience, to champion peer support, recovery colleges, involvement, co-production, all of those things at a very senior level, I just think is great. But I'd like those roles to be everywhere. That would be, to go back to my hope, it would be that all trusts would have directors of involvement or directors of lived experience, that all trusts would provide peer support workers for everybody who wanted one, that we'd have flourishing recovery colleges, that we would have flourishing co-production that influenced the way that services were designed, delivered, and monitored. So yes, so there are some people that I look up to in this country, but I also look to particularly people in academic positions in Australia that I've learned a lot from, the people who described that North Star, that that concept of being true to peer. I'm in awe of those people, really, that are further on than we are, really.
So, for people who are curious about who they are, let me know a couple of the names of the trusts. And if you know any writer, please let me know the name. So, the Trust Midlands, of course, Mel Ball is a superstar in this arena. Um, yeah. What other trust would you say is really progressive in this
So
sense?
the other trust that's very progressive is known by the acronym TUVE, so Tees, Esk and Wear Valleys in the northeast of England, and their director is called David Morton, and he's somebody that I know. I last saw at the mental health nursing conference that I presented the poster at, and they have great lived experience leaders working in that directorate of that trust as well. We've done some work. Rethink Mental Illness did some work with people in some of their inpatient services in that trust. They were big supporters of our network that I mentioned, the Recovery and Outcomes Network. So even going back 10 years, the trust they were big supporters, and they've gone on to do great things as well.
Brilliant. Kudos to them. And a writer for those articles, one of the writers to look up on the internet
Um,
in Australia.
in Australia, so there's, I don't know how you pronounce his name, Mark Lochhead, who's who is really good. Louise Byrne is somebody else. My mind's gone blank about the names of the other authors, but if you just look at consumer leadership, as they would call it in Australia, if you look for some of the names of people there, you'll find them.
Thank you. So now when it comes to your day-to-day and how you feel personally in your day-to-day life, where do you find hope and inspiration?
That's a really good question. I think I find my hope and inspiration from the people that I work with, most days, the experts by experience or the people working in peer support that are sharing their own lived experience to make a difference to other people, either in the peer support role or in our strategic commissioning, that people are being very brave, sharing their own lived experience in those spaces. And I think one thing that gives me hope is when people who are reluctant to share because they've had a bad experience sharing their lived experience before, and then they discover being brave, and they discover being finding those spaces where they feel valued, where people are kind, where they're able to flourish. That gives me hope. So the experts by experience, peer support workers that we work with that are doing those things, they give me hope for the future, because they're making a difference to themselves, they're making a difference to other people, and they're making a difference to mental health services, and that gives me hope and inspiration.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So, as an additional feature, here is my last question. Have you got any questions for me, Ian?
Well, I'm wondering who you would most like to have on your podcast, if you could have anybody on your podcast.
Wow, that's a big question, and there are so many people. At the moment, so I can't give an overall answer, so I'll just reveal my latest obsession. I would love to talk about lived experience on air, be it my channel, be it their channel. Probably their channel is better, is with Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart
Yeah.
in their podcast. I quite like the way they discuss. They introduced me to the concept of disagreeing agreeably. I don't have that mode, so I'm still training in that. But I think they do bring a lot of their lived experience that is relevant to their topic. And I think that's part of their success, frankly. So I'm also quite invested and obsessed with the idea of other professions using their lived experience apart from mental health. It always elevates and enriches the conversation, and people find it, I think, more intriguing. So I would love to talk about it with them. So that will be my answer. And then, of course, Beyonce. Of course, all of my favorite comedians. Recently, Josh Johnson. Sky is the limit. But
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
yeah.
that's great. No, that's great. Great answer, Neil. Yes.
Thank you for your question. Is there anything else you would like to add today?
Um, just where else you see your podcast series going? This is series 1, is it? Or is this?
So for Peer Journal, it's series 1. I recorded an audio-only podcast for Community of Excellence, which is a lived experience network for North London. So it will be also on the channel. Where it is going, I would like to find a way to do it regularly. And so I don't go crazy around making deadlines, but I do have kind of a routine, even though routines I don't do very good. But that will be so moving forward. I want to do seasons on more specific size of lived experience work, like doing the lived experience work in the NHS, and then talk to people who do this in the NHS, and then talking to different professionals in mental health about lived experience, like psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, social workers, um, and so on. I so many ideas, but let's see what will be possible.
Sounds absolutely great, Neil. I wish you all the best with that as well. And I shall look forward to hearing how it all develops.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. Hopefully, at some point, I'll see you in another season. Thank you so much. Goodbye.